Hello everyone and welcome to another video. Now in the previous one we looked at the Minisforum BD770i, a tiny motherboard with a built-in Ryzen 7745HX CPU and a PCIe 5 slot for adding a graphics card. We briefly focused on the integrated graphics performance, but in today's one I want to expand on that and test some more games using nothing but the 610M graphics found inside the CPU. The Radeon 610M is possibly the weakest RDNA2 GPU, and I'm expecting lower performance than that of the Vega graphics found inside Ryzen desktop APUs. Depending on your system config, 610M graphics may clock up to 1900 MHz, usually as part of lower end chips, or 2200 MHz like here, as part of the higher end Dragon Range series of processors. I believe these graphics are very similar, if not the same, as those found inside the Ryzen 7000 desktop series CPUs as well. We have just 2 compute units, 2 RT cores, and a 2200 MHz max frequency. Yeah, we won't be enabling ray tracing today though. I did try once and it did not go well. Let's get into some games. I'm using 32 gigs of DDR5 clocked at the maximum supported 5200 MHz. Performance could very well change based on memory speed as well, so bear that in mind. To play my games today, I'm using the Minisforum MKB i83 mechanical keyboard, which Minisforum kindly sent over, as well as the BD770i itself. This is the champagne coloured model, though it's available in obsidian black and vivid cerulean, vivid blue basically. It features an aluminium alloy design, 2.4G wireless via USB receiver or USB-C connectivity, 4 hot swap capabilities and different RGB lighting options. It makes a lovely difference to the cheap supermarket keyboard I've been using for the past 5 years, let me tell you. While my eyes are about to suffer due to the following frame rates, at least my fingers will be playing in comfort, no matter the performance. First up, we have CS2. At 1080p with the lowest settings and FSR balanced, we're seeing 72 FPS. Now it was important here to try and find a nice balance between performance and visual fidelity. You may be better off playing CS2 at 720p native instead, because this uses an older version of FSR, and even with the balanced preset, it can look a bit like a blurry mess. 720p native will actually get you slightly less performance though, and this seemed to be the best way to guarantee at least 60 FPS without making things look too terrible. It's playable, I think, but there will be some dips and drops, that's for sure. I've tried to target at least 60 FPS in these online FPS titles, and when it comes to single player games, I've tried to aim for 30, which I think is a reasonable approach. In Elden Ring up next then, this is a single player third person game, so I've tried to target 30 FPS. Turns out that in order to do that we had to go with 720p and the lowest settings anyway. So 37 FPS here with a few drops, 25 FPS was that 1% low, and the 0.1% low was 16. I've also left the minimum and maximum recorded frame rates on screen as well. The more data on screen, to be honest, the better. Next up we have a new game I've added to the benchmark roster here. This is The Finals, a free-to-play online game on Steam. Of course, I'm targeting 60 FPS here because this is a first-person shooter. So we have the lowest settings at 720p, so we're already running at 1280 by 720, but then we also need to enable FSR2 and set it to ultra performance in order to hit at least 60 FPS and sort of maintain a quite consistent 60 FPS as well. Surprisingly, this looks better than CS2 did at 1080p with the old version of FSR set to balanced, so I think this is okay. We can certainly see the enemy players, so that's good enough for me, and this is what we need really in order to hit that 60 FPS target. Grand Theft Auto 5 now, 1080p with the lowest settings, FXAA, no form of resolution scaling here whatsoever. I would suggest if you want 60 FPS, perhaps you want to play in first person mode, you could drop to 900p and hit closer to that, or 720p of course. I've found what I think is a nice balance between performance and visuals, 1080p with the lowest in-game settings, which is basically the normal settings for this game, and we're hitting 49 frames per second here, which I think is a fairly nice place to be. Next up we have The Witcher 3. Now this is quite surprising because I was expecting more performance from it. We're using the latest version of the game, but we do have it set to DX11 mode, so we don't get some of the newer options and visual effects that the DX12 mode brings, but this is the best way to guarantee the highest frame rate. 720p lowest with FXAA, and we saw 34 FPS with some pretty hefty stutters. Red Dead Redemption 2 at 720p now with the lowest settings, and FSR set to performance, so we're upscaling from something like 360p possibly here, 36 frames per second on average, although different areas will of course affect this. Here we weren't quite seeing 30, and near busier town areas we may see this drop even further. For the most part, I guess you could say it's playable, but it's up to you of course. We can't really do much else in terms of turning the settings down, so it'll have to do here. Cyberpunk 2077 next at 900p this time around with the lowest settings of course, and FSR 2.1 set to ultra performance. Now the other option, and the option I started off with, was actually switching to 720p and just using the performance mode instead of ultra performance, but I found that this still looked a little bit blurrier and we weren't really gaining anything in terms of performance, maybe 2 FPS. So yeah, I decided to stick with 900p with FSR 2.1 at ultra performance. It doesn't look as blurry or as bad as I thought, and luckily Cyberpunk 2077 with all the updates applied still looks pretty good even at its lowest visual quality. Finally then we have Fortnite, 1080p with the inbuilt performance mode of course and the lowest settings. Not only that, we have 70% resolution. I'll tell you why. This is because although we are getting at least 60 FPS, a lot higher than 60 FPS on average, there were still some frame dips and drops towards the low 50s. So if we turn the settings up any higher than this, the inconsistency would just increase as well. So this was the best way to sort of protect ourselves from dips and drops that were too heavy in those busier areas, if you get what I mean. I mean, it wasn't the worst experience in the world, and most of the time we were seeing at least 60 frames per second, but considering the hardware we're using, I think it did an okay job here. Now overall, the 610M graphics are definitely better suited to those online esports and perhaps older titles too. They very much do benefit from the help of modern upscaling techniques like FSR, and some games that have dynamic resolution scaling, well, you're probably best to use that too. For the weakest RDNA2, or what is one of the weakest RDNA2 GPUs, I think overall, well, I got what I expected out of it, and in some instances maybe better than expected results. For example, GTA 5 at 1080p. All that's left to say is thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this one, leave a like, leave a dislike if you didn't. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and hopefully I'll see all of you in the next one.